Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new series here at Carrot Corner. This series is called Where Are They Now? And the premise is that we get in touch with students who have taken the Carrot Poker School. Maybe they've taken one grade, maybe they've been working through the whole thing. And we have a look at their results, we talk to them about their game, and we try and fix a specific leak in their game that they've mentioned as a problem. In episode 1, we're going to be working with a chap called Dan, who got in touch and who actually came up with the idea for this series. Let's get right to it. Let's get into the hands. Let's meet today's contestant and have a chat with Dan. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. Well, here we are, guys. The first ever episode of Where Are They Now? We're going to track Carrot Poker School viewers, graduates, buyers, whatever you want to call them, and see how they're doing. So, Dan, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming up with the idea for this show. It's only right that you get to star in the premiere episode of Where Are They Now? How are you doing today?
Thank you, Pete, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Good. So this is your graph. We'll talk about that in a second. First off, though, how long have you been playing poker? When did you get Carrot Poker School? What's changed in your game since you started working your way through the course? And where have you got to in the course, actually, as well?
So I'm playing poker for 6 years, since 2018. Really enjoy it. Obsession, a lot of hands in the short, in the beginning of the game. And I played a lot of NL2 at the time and really enjoyed it, and still always dreamt of being a professional in my, 16 to 18 kind of years. And yeah, no, so now when I'm having a bit more time and, I'm grown up and everything besides poker is finished in my life, like education and business, I have a bit more time on my side to really concentrate it on it. And therefore, I try to invest in my poker education in the beginning of the year by purchasing Carrot Poker School. Before I already checked your videos, and I really, really felt that CPS and all of the content you provide is a bit different. And I mean by different, much more focused on the real task of playing online poker, and not that, recreational also. So really, really vibe with me. You also try to be scientific, which, I have a bit of university career behind me, and therefore I also vibe with that as well. And so I enjoyed the course, and I finished grade 2 last week, and it has been 20 episodes. And I really like those. I had a lot of studying time since February 2024. I think it was every week, at least one lecture. And then I did some research and, also some journaling about it, and tried to actively consume the content. And yeah, so I feel it improved my game a lot, but still there are a lot of edges and things we can improve.
Yeah. So since taking Carrot Poker School, then you've been working through the lectures. You've only gone through them once, right? Which is always a sign that they will not be embedded in your brain enough yet to use in your sort of subconscious competence and access them at the table. It's also only been a few months, and you need a ton of time to talk this over with people, review hands in the context of the theory. And then, Carrot Poker School is a theoretical course. It's not an exploit course. We obviously have content for that on Carrot Corner, like cash injection and grade E, and, some of the content in the subscriber library. But for the most part, the best way to get exploitative experiences with coaching and with, just playing poker and thinking about it. So there's a lot missing. Just because someone's worked through the Carrot Poker School, we're not selling magic beans at Carrot Corner. We're not expecting people to just suddenly become masters of the game by doing the course overnight. It takes months and months of hard work. Revisit lectures multiple times, talk about them, review hands. Getting application of the concepts into your game is a whole other battle. Watching the lectures and actually taking that on board is the first stage. The next stage is actually applying that at the table. So hopefully we can work on that a bit today. But it does seem like in a high rate game at 25 in L and GG over about 100,000 hands, it seems like you've become profitable after rake, or before rake back after rake, which is no easy task these days, so that's good to see. But you mentioned that you're struggling a bit with red line. We can see that from the graph. And so today, what I thought we could do is I've marked some hands here from your database that you sent over, and we can talk together about how we can up your aggression a bit. One thing I'm seeing with your game is you're not shy about bluffing when pots are big. You're quite sticky sometimes, actually, in big pots from some hands that we've seen, but small pots are kind of passing you by. I think we're missing value. We're not building enough. I want to talk about medium-sized pots on the turn today. Every episode of this show, YouTube audience, is going to have a different theme. We're going to review a different leak. So while, there's loads of leaks we could talk about in your game today, Dan, I want to focus on this one. And obviously we can't cure you just by doing that, but we can hopefully fix one really important thing that will already boost your win rate a bit.
Let's go.
Cool, let's do it. All right, so we have the big slick. Such a corny way of saying ace king. No one even says that anymore, right, in your generation. So we open ace king under the gun. We're called by recreational player, right? Very important in GG25 that we're always observing who the recreationals are before we even get into a spot. This goes three-way. We flop two pair. We c-bet the flop. We're called in one spot. The turn is a 6, and we check the turn. Villain bets, we call, and river goes check, check. Okay, so the main street I want to focus on here is, well, flop. One thing we can do here in a pool like this is be very face up with our sizing scheme. So when we have a good value hand like ace king, we can actually just dial up the sizing significantly here, and people are going to be fairly inelastic. Think about some of the hands that call you on this flop, right? What kind of stuff do we expect people to call bets with on ace king 10?
Every king with a flush draw, maybe every spade in general, like nines with a spade. And, they will be very inelastic, as you said. Like if you have nines with a spade, you just call also 5 big blinds, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, nines with a spade, you might have actually found one of the hands that is a bit sensitive to sizing there. Maybe not. Depends on the player, but I think the main bulk of the region, the main way we can improve your hand reading here is instead of focusing so heavily on spades, that's visual, it's apparent, your brain is being drawn to that, and that's probably a bad habit, like a moth to a flame. It would be more accurate to actually talk about all of the random top pair, all of the 10x plus straight draw, the king x plus straight draw, all of those hands. Like, sure, a flush draw is like an example of a hand that'll be inelastic, but so is jack 10, queen 10, king queen, king jack, pocket jacks if it exists, that kind of thing, and ace 5, ace 6, ace 7, ace 8, ace 9, ace 2, ace 3 suited, all of this sort of stuff. So whenever you're in this spot and you pick this size instead of a bigger one, right away you're building a smaller pot by the river and you're leaving a lot of money on the table for the clean runouts on which you want to value bet this hand big and play really big pots, right? So size up flop, play your hand in a vacuum, don't worry about having a standard size. And no Carrot Poker School takes us through toolkits and it says have certain sizes in certain spots, know what your game plan is. That's the theory, but then this is the Wild West, right? And this is where we have to really start saying what's best for my hand in a vacuum right here, right now. Sound good?
Sounds great. Sorry for I actually misread the flop a bit. I thought it's three spades, so pardon my obsession with the flush draw. I'm not obsessed with the flush draw, and I know there's no protection, and I think that's something you really doing a great job by explaining during the course, because people are so obsessed with either betting their draws or like trying to get the draws out, which is not possible. Like flush draw is a value hand. It's like at least a mediums equity hand, and you will never get it out. You cannot bet that much with any strength hand to be sensible. So
right.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's while there's a little bit of value here against the flush draw because we're a favorite against it and the board pairing will allow us to cooler that hand if it gets there and we'll win a big pot, we're more focused on the hands that are more dead against us when we're value betting, and we think they're going to be quite inelastic, and that's why we drive up the sizing here. That's not targeting, audience. They love to jump down my throat when they think I'm doing targeting because I hate on targeting, as you know. It's not what we're doing. It's not what we mean. Okay, moving on to the turn. The 6 of spades comes. Now, this in my mind is a very key node, and it's one that it's really easy to get wrong. Your knee-jerk reaction in this spot might be to check, but can you think of some arguments for betting instead of checking here? What could those be if there were such arguments?
There are still ace-x, and people there to inelastic with ace-x in general, they will definitely call again, but they may not bet ace-7 offsuit if they're recreational or something, and that could be a thing. Like you basically could squeeze out more value by betting, and if they they will call, but they will improve only 20% of the time or something, so it's neglectable. It's very nice to get this value.
Yeah, so mode of investment. This is a key concept when it comes to, okay guys, should we do it then? You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Let's do one of these. Editor drum roll.
True EV.
There we go. So when it comes to True EV, there we go. Natural on the channel. When it comes to True EV, we need to choose a mode of investment that maximizes that, and they're not going to be equal. That's the first premise. Solvers are going to say, well, whether you bet smallish or check your mode of investments are all neutral. The solver makes you indifferent because it's a right paying that way. It's always going to neutralize things for us. The opponent will be more inclined to call again. We know that weak opponents, especially fish, at low stakes like this are going to be overvaluing made hands on wet textures, so they're not going to be reacting enough to the wet texture with their pair, their bad two pair that this beats, like ace 10, ace king. We should have mentioned those on the flop as well, by the way. We cooler other two pair. And even like their jack 10 or their whatever. So you're not going to check fold here. Your hand is too good for that. You are going to be investing money. Which mode of investment do you want? And I think you've answered the question. They're going to invest wider by calling than they are by betting. And so try to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you turn a hand that, it's not as happy as it was on the flop, but it's still very value bettable before you turn that hand into a bluff catcher. Because now what we're doing is we're winning less money against worse two pair and one pair and pair plus draw, and we're still putting money in against flushes anyway, right? It's not like we don't put money in against better hands here. If villain has a set, a straight, a flush, they're probably betting turn and we're calling anyway, so we don't save money there as such. The river comes for a flush. We go for check, which is obviously okay as played, but you can just see how badly people play at these stakes, how much they merge, and who knows what villain thinks he's doing on the turn. Maybe putting you on, maybe thinks he has the best hand, but by and large, people are going to invest more by calling this than by betting it. So I'd go for 3 streets here. I'd bet the turn fairly small, and if I don't get raised, I would go ahead and bet the river on a brick, because the pool's going to be very capped there if they don't raise you on the turn. So let's go for like half pot on turn, and then if we don't get raised, consider value betting river again. Don't get too weirded out by the spade. The more big spades are possible on the board, the less flushes there'll be in the opponent's range, because a lot of flushes consist of the ace or 10 of spades, right? A lot of the time. So definitely fine to go for 3 streets here on a brick run out.
What size would you use on the river?
If I got a brick river after betting turn half pot, I'd probably just pick something like B75. Like I wouldn't overbet, I wouldn't pot it, but I wouldn't go too small either, because I think our hand's actually very good, and this pool is going to over defend made hands on wet runouts. It's not going to fold enough, not going to react enough to relative hand strength, right?
Great, thank you.
GG25 and L villains are not renowned for making hero folds or adjusting to relative hand strength. Ace 10 of spades, we go for a small ISO. So again, right here, you might think I'm nitpicking. It's like, God, this carrot guy is a nightmare. He's like picking up on every little thing. But like, what could we do in this spot to actually improve our true EV, do you think?
5 big blinds.
Yeah, there we go. Squeezing the lemon, right? Getting every last drop of EV out of that fruit. So this pool under 3 bets, under limp 3 bets when it limps, because there is some kind of like GTO theory about limp 3 betting as a thing. And you are meant to limp 3 bet if you limp. And that's not happening. So the downsides in theory about going 5 big blinds are getting punished by people behind you, getting limp re-raised by this player, not happening. Make it nice and big. You can even go like 5.7 big blinds here, build a huge pot with a huge hand, because this is a huge hand against the opponent's range. You're in position, it's rich in implied odds, you've got tons of EV, make the pot bigger. We're leaving money on the table by not. We go 3-way. We check the flop. I'm fine with this. I don't mind getting some transparency for now. We hit an ace on the turn and they both checked you again. What's your equity? And can you think of anything that's different here in practice than in theory?
I think those guys will definitely have draw mania, so they will bet all of their, mediocre draws, sometimes open-enders at least, like on open-enders and better. And they will also bet an ace because they think they need to deny, they need to deny equity against a flush draw, which is not happening as we already said. So, I think if they check, they at least have a queen, and or at maximum, I mean, and yeah. So we have maybe 70-ish, 80-ish kind of percent of equity.
Yep, and As you'll know from grade 1 of the Carrot Poker School, the board texture section where we talk about like still lakes and choppy seas and all of those kind of different textures, I think that's grade 1 lecture 7, maybe?
7 or 8. It's quite in the end.
8? Yeah, I think 8's the float betting one. I always remember that as the float betting one. It
It
could be
is, you're right.
7 or 9 though.
But
It's
it's
around
9.
there.
9.
9.
Then it's
Okay.
7.
We're agreed. It's lecture 9 of grade 1. Okay, cool. So in that case, like, we're on a wet board, and if we have 75% equity here, that's actually better in a sense than having 75% equity on a dry board, because our equity comes in the form of people being live against us. You know, the 25% they have or the 20% they have comes from them being able to redraw against us, not from them crushing us, right? So if this was like a dry board and we only had 75% equity, we might like say it's not necessary that we value bet now, depends on how useful the folds are and how vulnerable the hand is. But here, given that they'll have gutters galore, they'll have some draws, they'll have second pair, third pair, and they'll have worse ace-x, you have a very good kicker here for a limped pot. Like, it's very unusual that someone has ace-jack or better. You should absolutely be value betting the turn, not just for the sake of betting the turn, but because it sets up a bigger pot for the river exponentially. You know, the bigger you go on the turn, the more money you can get in on the river, and the higher your EV overall. So one of the reasons our win rate isn't higher over this 100,000 hand sample you've played this year is that you've not been able to drive enough pot growth for value on earlier streets. And that stops you from playing a big pot with the top of your range or good parts of your range on the river. And that's anti-exploitative because it's actually going against what you should be doing, which is exploiting the 25 and L pool's tendency to not be able to fold second pair and stuff like that. Okay, so we want to bet the turn there for sure.
Ooh.
Pot into 2 people. Yeah. What's going on? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so when people potting, I was already sneak peeking into grade E of the Carrot Poker School because I bought the full scholarship, and there was one lecture, of course, about bet sizing, and recreationals using half pot is usually overbluffed and on the river, and if they use pot, it's usually underbluffed. So
Yep.
even if GTO would say, it's like a value beater, and it's a very, very nice hand to have after this action sequence, I really like, with my today knowledge, I feel that could be very good fold.
Yeah. So GTO definitely wouldn't say it's a value beater. GTO would say that this is a bad bluff catcher. Well, and not a great bluff catcher, because the villain's value range here is like 9x and boats probably for this sizing. And you block bluffs and don't block any boats apart from ace 9. So you don't really have a good bluff catcher here. And you don't beat any value in GTO. So even in theory, this is not going to be a slam dunk call in a 3-way pot, even though you can make arguments like, well, isn't our hand under-repped? This is an awful thought process, by the way, because it has zero to do with what's actually going on. You can say, my hand's underrepresented, I have to call. And you may as well just say something like, well, it's 25 to 4 in the afternoon, so I have to call. Like, it's that relevant, you may as well just look at your watch. So I agree that there's a few data points here that are really upsetting. One is like, okay, upsetting is a stretch, but they're a bit disconcerting, shall we say. The 9 pairing gives villain a whole bunch of new value hands, and we do know that GG25 and L players do flat 9x out the small blind, right? They can also just be slow playing a boat or something. And in terms of wanting to bluff for pot into 2 opponents on this texture, the incentive is very, very low. So do we win a third of the time here? I think not. How many 25 and L students fold this spot? Probably 10%, 15%, because it's just unnatural to fold top pair. I'm not surprised that you've made this call. We're probably going to lose. And eventually we learn our lesson by taking our better medicine here. But you strike me as the kind of guy that will learn from this and will probably be folding this nowadays. This hand was played in March. So who knows? Maybe this is something that you've since fixed.
Great stuff.
Cool. So cliff notes are: bet the turn, don't leave money on the table. It's exponential. The bigger you bet turn, the bigger you can bet river. And use the data points for bluff catching of multi-way and pot sizing, and you find a fold here with every bluff catcher. Easy. People call that a hero fold. I don't think it's that heroic when you actually break down what's going on. I think it's to some extent the fold of a lion, but I want to say it's the fold of a lion cub. Maybe not like a full adult lion.
Fold of Simba of the Lion King, right?
Yeah, it's a Simba fold. Absolutely. Okay. Pocket tens. Go for a big, I like this, right? Big, nice 3-bet. Get lots of money in the pot against pool. This is good. Lot of quads. So That's a lot of ones and zeros, you know, that we're seeing there. That's a lot of tens. So we start with small. I think this is fine. You can go kind of either way here. We started this hand untopped up for whatever reason, so probably that's because like are you from Germany and they have weird regulations about topping up? Is that what it is?
That it is. And I actually have started very long and it's never really working. So I need to manually top up. And that's why some hands I have 80, 90-ish big blinds.
Do
But
you
yeah,
do you pay more rake as a German player as well?
I do. Like every rake is multiplied by a little factor of 1.7, whatever. I don't want to share the details, but
Mhm.
yeah.
So your win
Hard.
rate after rake then is more impressive than it seems because you're actually paying more rake than the average player. Yeah, that's great. Okay, good. So you're obviously doing a lot of stuff right to be winning in that very harsh environment. It is a soft pool, and I'm a big believer that if we play exploitatively enough in a soft pool, we can beat big rake structures, but we can't do that by playing GTO and trying to copy solvers, right? We have to do that by always exploiting. Okay, so I don't mind this. You can bet a bit bigger. You can go for a check here as well and go for a check raise. I think that's an okay way to go as well. Don't worry about what you're blocking here because villain still has loads of pocket pairs that are going to invest, right? So don't go into your shell and be like, okay, I need to like start getting fancy and slow playing and stuff. So this check on the turn I'm okay with because I think people reopen too much here. And I would check jam. Where you'll make a mistake on this turn maybe is that if you do face a bet, which you don't this time, you might talk yourself into slow playing and check calling because you're worried about getting fold equity. You know your hand's invincible. It's tempting to keep slow playing there. But just check jam because people are bet calling eights and nines and 7-8 and stuff like that and jacks. And you don't want river to come ace and check check to happen and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely just check jam on the turn if you do check there. You might do better just by betting against this pool as well if they're passive. You know, like betting is maybe the best play here just because people aren't in love with bluffing. Even if they've called the flop with overcards, they may not bluff here, even though it's a good spot for range. So bet might be a bit better again on the turn there. And then on the river, I think a very clear value bet, and I'd go very, very big here. You'd go for the all-in. I love this. I love this. I think this is great. Yep, you get called by some 8s, 9s, ace X. People will station you in GG25, you know. They'll call you with random hands. So this is nice.
There's a very nice lecture in the Carrot Poker School, which also explains the reason why you should, if you block all the, like top level hands, they have only mid strength hands. Like the only thing they can never have a 10, right? So like they need to call with pocket jacks here or pocket nines or whatever. So there is no, like they will never reopen the action or very seldomly reopen by bluffing on the river. So it makes sense to just go B200 and getting
Right.
called.
Right. Because if you check here or bet small here, theory would do that, relying on getting bluff raised at some frequency, right? Because villain can have a 10 and the villain doesn't know you have two tens and they can have that potato, right? They can go for that bluff, repping those hands for value and just like with their queen high or whatever. That's not going to happen in practice. So we're much better off here just going for all of it. And again, mode of investment, we're really just expecting people to invest more by calling on this node than by bluffing. So don't get fancy, don't slow play just because you have quads. Resist that temptation to like trap and deceive and be Phil Hellmuth, you know. You don't want to do that, guys. Come on. Come on now.
I actually have a theory why you call pocket tens pocket potatoes, but I will not spoil it here in the video. I have a theory.
Unless do you? I'd be really, really impressed if your theory's right. Like, I'd be absolutely shocked, but okay, that's interesting. Maybe you should give the theory before the end because this is a talking point. Chat likes this, comment section likes this, and it's going to generate comments. So before we wrap up today, I want to hear your theory.
Okay.
All right, guys, keep watching. Find out if Dan has got this right. Okay, so King Jack, I tagged this one because it's played really well, apparently. Yeah, it's skim over hands sometimes. Oh, I know why I tagged this one. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this. Okay, cool. So this is a really good call down, in my opinion, and people are going to think I'm a bit mad here. But what's going on here is that you have this really unfiltered range, right? And when people get to the turn here and bet, they typically are over bluffing. Your hand beats every bluff. It's a bluff catcher, as you know. And then we end up calling the river here. And the downside in this pool is like the guy shows you like ace 3. And you're like, what the hell are you doing, bro? But he just has ace 3 because he's merged. But we just you take the rough with the smooth here, I think, with King Jack. Oh my god, yeah, okay, yes, a pair this time. But he could have had ace 5 there sometimes. So it's a less good spot than it would be against like a properly polarized over bluffing villain. But blind versus blind, this is grade E carrot poker school stuff. Very overbluff nodes. I love the way you played the king jack here. This one got caught up in the filter because it looked a bit like you were being passive stationary, but when I actually got into the hand, it looked good. So I don't even need to talk about that. Here's one I do want to talk about. So we 4-bet the ace-king here. Hijack versus button small blind. 5-6 deuce, we decide to bet, which is neither here nor there. I'm not going to talk too much about that. And then on the turn, a king comes. Let me hear a thought process here, actually. This is an interesting spot.
So we have been the 4-better, right? So our
Yep.
range is very top heavy, very strong. And I think people in 4-bet pots in general, if they doing the 4-bet, they are much, under bluffing. And if they, calling the 4-bet, I think they could be too wide, or at least they will call their pocket pairs trying to set mine. And, there's a lot of stuff in. It depends a bit of if the guys are nitty or a bit more in the passive, making hands side. So to me, like, this is a very good spot. I think we always have the nuts here and we should just value bet. The point is, in the past, I have been much like too centered about geometric bet sizing. So as soon as I see some SPR approaching 1, I'm like, let's get it in. And I don't think about the merit of maybe a smaller bet size here. So I think nowadays making it 25 here sounds like a good exploit because people are like, oh, I have pocket eights and I definitely need to call the small sizing, but they actually have only 4% equity against my hand. So that could be very nice exploit to get them maybe even on the river to put everything or stick everything inside. I actually have been subject to that already, and sometimes I'm calling down very light, especially against regs or like regular players which are very good, and then I just jam the flop and then I call down because I think they can never have it, but they also use that kind of logic. So all in all, let's put 25 inside would be nice, but I think I'm going to jam on this in this kind of hand here.
Yeah, so I think jam's a big mistake because we end up just getting all the money in anyway, but we do it so quickly that we kind of stop villain from calling that extra 20 big blinds. It's a lot of money, 20 big blinds in the grand scheme of things. That adds up very fast, It's like a fifth of a stack. So extremely powerful math there from yours truly. But when you have like a bluff here as well, it also makes sense to go small. That's not why you should go small with this hand, by the way, because we're trying to just maximize true EV. But in general, you want to make sure you get that extra street from people who are only going to call a smaller bet here, not a bigger one, or people who are calling 2 but not stack. And then you have a higher chance, I think, of actually getting the stack on the river once the pot odds are better and they're a bit more roped in at these stakes. I 100% agree with that read of the 25 NL pool. It's a common thought process leak, actually, that people think it's this neatness, tidiness kind of leak where they're like, well, it's not tidy or crisp or clean to go third pot here. It looks awkward. That's just kind of OCD. That's kind of like arranging the mugs in your kitchen cupboard to the point where you've like measured them to be millimeters apart or something like that. It's like a type of like precision that is like so overboard. That's one of the weirdest analogies, but there's always mugs sitting around on the desks, so here we go. But it's arbitrary kind of neatness, right? It's not important neatness. It's not the kind of neatness that has utility.
In engineering, it's the same, right? If you're an engineer, you are only using the kind of ditches after the decimal separator you need. Like if you need 3, you need them, but usually you don't need them. Like you just
Right.
need very precise enough.
Exactly. So there's nothing better about keeping SBR 1 or anything like that. So small bet here is great. I would keep value betting. Again, I think it comes down to mode of investment. It comes down to the idea that like people are more likely to call off jacks by you betting here and shoving river than they are to like jam the river when you check. If they have nothing, like have ace queen, they're probably going to fold to your bet. But again, this pool's not that likely to bluff the river if you check back. So again, I think like a small bet's good here. I don't think check's like terrible on this node. We did actually check here, and it might have been that you said, I only have available shove or check, and I don't like shove. And I think check's better than jam here, actually. I think giving a bit more rope and stuff here at this SPR is better. Villain goes all in. I think we're going to have to call here, and villain spewed with ace-5. I feel like I've seen this hand before. There's a bit of deja vu here with this one.
Gauntlet hand, I think.
It was on Gauntlet, yeah.
One final comment about that. I think by checking turn is fine because you don't have the urgency of betting.
Right,
Urgency of betting is only a thing if you really, really need to facilitate pot growth, but we
right.
don't. So checking, there is some merit to checking, but betting small is the better exploit.
I love it when like a student does the carrot poker school and then they're basically a walking, talking carrot poker school at the end of it. That's what you sound like with the terminology. So you've definitely done, just to sort of bring this to a close here, I think you've done a fantastic job of like really ingraining the concepts, because a lot of people watch carrot poker school as learn entertainment, like they'd watch a YouTube video. And that's a huge trap because it is not the kind of content at all that you can absorb while you're like watching another thing or playing a game on your phone or something like that. You need to be watching Carrot Poker School when you're like, hardcore in the mood to learn, when you're like really wanting to geek out. That's when you want to watch it. You're going to nerd out, you're going to watch it, you're going to take notes, absorb everything. I think you've done a fantastic job of that. Let's get more aggression into your turn game. Let's get you building pots. Let's focus on sizing. Let's focus on being free and playing every hand in a vacuum, building the pot size that we want, really getting that blue line to soar. And you know what? Like your red line will improve as well when you do that, because you will, as a byproduct of using the right value sizes, you'll generate more fold equity. Now, that's not the goal, but it's a healthy byproduct, right, of actually getting that blue line in shape, is that you'll see the red line pick up a little bit by doing this as well, which is cool. Yep. All right. So, let's wrap this up. What kind of advice would you give to people who are thinking about getting Carrot Poker School, or have just got Carrot Poker School, or like thinking about starting that poker education?
I think the first thing, make room in your life for that and consume it actively, like you already said, Pete. It's not the kind of content you can just get by and just learn entertainment, like consume. I feel you need to commit to it, and that also means, like for me in my life, I make now room also in the future for poker in general by providing more time for it and really trying to do it professionally, because I dreamt being a poker professional in my youth. At 16, I wrote a letter to my later self, in which I actually stated that I want to do that. So there's a big obsession in me, and so I try also to commit into my life that obsession, and that means making room. Of course, you need to pay your bills and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but that's very important that you try to commit at least enough time. And could be half an hour, could be 10 minutes each day, but you will slowly improve. Like just do every day step by step, and make room in your weeks, and it will work definitely. It's content, it's very worth when you are making the time for it.
Yeah, so it's like getting on a streak, getting into good habits, and little and often something sustainable is way better than like a 3 day binge where you watch it nonstop, retain nothing, and then you've burned yourself out and you never look at it again. I'll tell you a weird truth, right? Um, Back when we had downloadable products, like back in the day, we could track like how much people were watching the content more, because we could see if they downloaded each grade, because they were all like separate files that came in that full scholarship, that grade 1, 2, 3, and E package that we do. And an amazingly high amount of people never downloaded anything. Like they bought the Carrot Poker School and they like either didn't download anything, or they like left it for months or something like that without downloading something. It's wild. So, if you fall out of love with poker studying, if you're not on a streak, you might end up like not getting value for your money when you make these purchases. So definitely the thing to do is regular learning, little and often, get into a streak with it. Absolutely. All right, Dan, my overall judgment about your game is that it's way better than the Poker Gauntlet episode made it seem, because back when we did that, I was looking at older hands from like last year and stuff. I think this year, your game is looking stronger. I think the main worries here are just hand reading properly, red line stuff, getting more aggression in there, and really going all out in that exploitative direction. And yeah, it's going to take time. You can only do so much in a week or a month, I'm sure, by the time that you have worked through Grady and done some more exploitative stuff. You're gonna be getting through 50 NL. You've started 50 NL, right? It's not started amazingly well. You've hit some negative variants, but it's early days. So
I had some good scores also in tournaments as well, and so it's not a big deal that the downswing is now hit.
yeah, I mean it's inevitable at some point, right? Okay, guys, let us know what you think about the show. More episodes in the pipeline, especially if you like it. If you do like it, hit the like button and let me know in the comments so I do continue making a bunch of these. Always good. Do subscribe. And it's carrotcorner.com if you want to check out the Carrot Poker School or any of our other resources. Thank you so much, Dan. Best of luck to you at the tables, and we'll catch up with you again in the future.
You forgot the pocket potato thing.
Yeah, let's not end the video. That wasn't the end of the video. Did you guys think that was the end? Come on. Pocket potatoes, right? Let's hear it. Why are pocket tens called pocket potatoes?
So the 0 looks like a potato, like, you could, if you have some little imaginary, you can think about it. It's like, looks a bit like a potato, right?
Let's put
And
four of them on the screen so they can make that judgment for themselves.
And if you flip quads with it, you have like 4 potatoes on it because you have 4 zeros, and each of the ones looks a bit like a board where you can cut them. So I think that was my best guess. I have a lot of mad dreams and fantasies, so maybe it's a bit of a stretch. But I'm really curious. You always tell us we will never know, and it's fine if you keep it the secret, but still,
Man, like that's a fantastic guess. It's not right, but it's a really good guess. I just tilted my head 90 degrees there, and it does look a bit like a kind of elongated baked potato on a chopping board. If those are mad dreams to you, I can only imagine what your life is like if that's a wild dream, a potato on a chopping board. But each to their own. But no, that's not right. It's good, but it's not right, guys. When it comes to pocket potatoes, I'm afraid to say you'll never, ever know. Now get out of here. I'll see you in the next video.